Pranam, Jai Jinendra to everybody. I hope you're all well. We'll start with the Prarthana as usual, and we'll carry on with today's class. Namo Ariyantanam, Namo Siddhanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Vatsayanam, Namo Loe Sappasahunam. Eso Panchanamukaro Sabba Pavapanasano Mangalanancha Sabvesim Padamam Havai Mangalam. Namo Arihantanam, Namo Siddhanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Vatsayanam, Namo Loe Sabba Sahunam. Eso Panchanamukaro Sabba Pavapanasano Mangalanancha Sabvesim Padamam Havai Mangalam. Namo Arihantanam, Namo Siddhanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Vatsayanam, Namo Loe Sabba Sahunam. Eso Panchanamukaro Sabba Pavapanasano Mangalanancha Sabvesim Padamam Havai Mangalam. Veera Sarvasura Surendra Mahito Virambuddha Sansrita Virena Bhihata Sakarmanichayo Viraya Nityam Nama Veera Tirthamidam Prautamatulam Veera Shighoram Tapo Veere Shri Truti Kirtikanti Nichaya Shri Veerabhadram Disa Kamathe Dharanendra Cha Sochitam Karma Kurvati Prabhustulya Manobhritti Parshvanatha Sriyestu Vaha Anguthe Amrutavase Laptitana Bhandar Shri Guru Gautam Samariye Manavanchita Fadadatar Vasagaharam Pasam Pasam Vandame Kamaghanamukam Visahara Visaninasam Mangalakalana Visahara Fulingamantam Kanthe Tare Ijo Sayamano Tasagaharo Gamari Dutta Jarajanti Osamam Chittha Udure Manto Tujapanamavi Bahu Falohoya Nara Tiriyesu Vijiva Pavantina Dukha Vido Gacham Tuha Samate Lade Chintamanigapaya Vaye Pavanti Avikhanam Jiva Ramaram Thanam Yasantho Mayasa Patibara Nibarana Yena Adeva Dijjibo Him Bhave Bhave Pasachana Chanda. Today's class, we will move forward our story on Bhagwan Parshvanath. We have looked at the first life when this story starts as Marubhuti, who is the son of a Purohit of a king called Arvind. He had a brother called Kamat, and the relationship between Marubhuti and Kamat is described, and what happens in their life after their parents' death, and how the seeds of enmity are sown in Kamat's mind, and that keeps on growing. And ultimately, we saw that Kamat, as a tapas now, kills his brother Marubhuti by hitting him with a heavy stone twice. Even though Marubhuti had come to apologize to him for having disclosed his wrong behavior and his very sinful activity with Marubhuti's wife. Even though Marubhuti was not at fault, he comes down feeling sorry for his brother and asks for his forgiveness. But Kamat retains his anger. And then we saw that after his death, Marubhuti's soul is born as an elephant in the mountain range of Vindhyachal, and there he becomes the leader of a troop of elephants, and his main cow elephant is the soul of Kamat's wife Varuna, and both Marubhuti and Varuna as elephants are living a peaceful life. And we saw how King Arvind, who becomes increasingly detached from worldly life, and once the desire to become a monk uh, becomes very strong for him, and on seeing a beautiful sky with a rainbow suddenly changing into something as if everything has cleared up, the rain has gone, the rainbow has disappeared, and King Arvind begins to think that everything in life is temporary like this, and I need to make an effort to ensure that I am doing the best for myself. And in this contemplation, he achieves Avdignan, becomes a monk, and progresses spiritually, and joins a caravan which is going towards Vaitadya Parvat or Vindhyachal mountain range. And on the way there, they come to the same place near a lake where Marubhuti and his troop of elephants are residing. And we heard how Marubhuti, the elephant, now joins, listens to King Arvind, who has calmed him down after a fit of wildness that Marubhuti had demonstrated, because he was very upset that man had come to disturb his peace in this uh, forest, which he considered himself to be the master of. And we heard how Marubhuti then remembers his past life. So does the cow elephant Varuna remember her past life. And Marubhuti remembers all the vows of a Shravak. He's reminded of these vows as a Shravak. And even as an elephant, he begins to lead a life as a Shravak, trying to fulfill all the vows within the limits of his ability as an elephant. And that is where we ended that story 2 weeks ago. Uh, most of you were in the class last week when we heard Rishibai Zaveri Mumukshu, Rishibai Zaveri, who is taking Diksha on the 8th of June. And we heard his inspiring talk. And thank you all very much for engaging and learning about his reasons. And I'm hoping that uh, his story will have inspired many of us to uh, think about the value of detachment, the path that he is following. Okay. I'm now going to start sharing my slides. We're moving the story briefly today, but I wanted to talk to you about uh, certain other aspects. And along in this story, we will uh, So just a reminder of the second life. We talked about this part of the story on the left-hand side of the picture where a monk, uh, in this case, King Arvind, uh, who is now become a monk with his disciples, is giving a sermon to Marubati the elephant, and he is calmly listening and accepting all the teachings, and he remembers all the details of his previous life. And King Arvind the monk now also explains to him again and reiterates what those vows are, and gets him into a steadfast acceptance of these vows. And spiritually, the Marubhuti, the elephant's life begins to change significantly. Today, the story is about what happens to Kamat. Kamat does not calm down even after he has killed his brother, Marubhuti, because this was a murderous act, and obviously this was something that the uh, group of ascetics that he was part of, they were all tapas, who would live in the forest and feed on the fruits of the forest and maybe go down. Sometimes they would generally live in small huts uh, and meditate throughout the day. So they did not have the same kinds of vows as Jain monks. They had a lot of liberties, but their life was still very much uh, based on uh, penance, on tap, and all these tapas and his guru, they stopped uh, paying any respect to Kamat because of the murderous act that he had committed, and his fellow disciples continued to criticize his heinous act. Kamat did not abandon his anger or hatred, and as a result of the continued aggressive state of his mind and his holding on to his hatred and anger, he is born as a, it says kukkut or kutkut species of snake. I was trying to find out what the word kukkut actually is translated in different languages. It's actually referring to a hen or a cockerel. Uh, any reference to a snake is not easy to find, and I presume from the description in the Trisasti Shalaka Purush Charitra, this species of snake is what we currently call a flying snake, because there's some reference to how he goes about in this life, and I presume this is a species of snake which has the ability to jump uh, from one place to another. It said in the Trisasti Shalaka Purush Charitra that this, in Bhagwan Parshvanath's story, that this snake roams about killing lots of other animals in the forest and carrying on his aggressive, angry behavior. He's born in the same forest, so once he comes to the area where Marubhuti the elephant lives, he saw Marubhuti the elephant drinking water heated by the sun in the lake that we have heard about before. Now, the question arises, why is he drinking only water that is heated by the sun? So he is basically trying to drink water which does not have uh, a lot of life forms within it, to reduce the amount of hinsa that he has to perform. He obviously is an elephant and does not have the ability to boil water like we do. And again, this is part of the normal practice of Shravaks only drinking boiled water. Marubhuti, the elephant, had got progressively weak with the penance and the tap that he was doing after he had accepted these vows. And on this particular day, he gets stuck in the mud of the lake. He does not have the strength to release himself and get out of there. And while he is stuck in the mud in the lake, the snake, Kamat, in the previous life, jumps up on him and bites him in a soft area and pours the poison that he carries into this elephant. The poison starts spreading in the elephant's body. So here on the right-hand side, you can see the picture that is depicting a lake and the snake being stuck, the elephant being stuck there, and the snake up on the back of the elephant. The description of the story actually is that the elephant is bitten in the kumbhasthal, and I understand kumbhasthal as meaning the soft belly part that is below, between the four legs of the elephant. And but this depiction seems to suggest that it was had bitten the elephant on the head. But I suppose that there is some liberty taken in the artist of this picture. But the Trisasti Shalakha Purush Charitra mentions that the elephant was bitten in the kumbhasthal, that's the soft part, so that the poison spreads rapidly. Marubhuti, the elephant, realizing, and this is again something that I wanted to touch on in a bit more detail, realizing that his death is near, calmly vows to give up eating and drinking. So Marubhuti is well versed, even as an elephant, because he remembers the teachings that he learned in the previous life and also everything that had been taught to him by the monk King Arvind. And realizing that his death is near, accepts that very calmly and begins to take vows that until my death, I'm giving up all eating and drinking. And at some stage, maybe in the future, we will talk about what are the preparations that a Shravak and a Shravika can do before death is near, and how to prepare for a peaceful and a comfortable death that does not harm the soul in the extreme excitement and the distress that sometimes accompanies end of life. That's something that we can talk about sometime in the future. Marubhuti the elephant, he is starting meditating and reciting the Naukar mantra in his mind. And he dies peacefully, and the soul of Bhagwan Parshvanath, of Marubhuti, the elephant, is born in Sastrar Devlok with a lifespan of 17 Sagaropam. The cow elephant Varuna also performs penance, and after her death, the soul or her soul gets born in the second Isan Devlok. There are two words here, my mistake here. Second and Isan are two separate words. Second, that means number two. Isan is the name of the Devlok. Isan Devlok as a beautiful Devi. Varuna as a Devi in the second Devlok keeps on thinking of Marubhuti and ignores other Devs in the Devlok she was born in. She does not have the ability to independently go up to the eighth, to the higher Devlok where Marubhuti's soul is born, but she does not desire anybody else. And Marubhuti, the Dev, with the power of Audignan, which all Devs have, realizes that Varuna, the Devi, only desires him, and he takes her with him to his Devlok, and they live a long life there. I presume, though the details are not here, that the lifespans of Marubhuti, the Dev, would have been much greater than the lifespan of Varuna, the Devi, because she was born in a much lower Devlok, and her lifespan uh, was probably not as long as his. So they spend a long time in the Devlok. We'll just stop for a minute after we finish this slide and talk about what is a Sagarupam in a minute. The Kutkut snake too dies after some time, and his soul is born in the fifth hell, that is the Panchmi Narak, again with a lifespan of 17 Sagarupam. So he spends his life in extreme pain and discomfort without any relief. And he spends that huge time of 17 Sagarupam, whereas Marubhuti is spending the same amount of time in a Devlok where there is only pleasure and there is no pain. The snake Kutkut or Kamat experiences the extreme punishment of this Narak and gets no rest from his punishment. Stop sharing here. We'll just talk about a few other things here. So if you want to keep your videos on and engage, or if there are any questions at this stage, please feel free to ask them. I think I might have covered what a Sagarupam is in one of the previous classes, but does anybody remember? I'm not sure I have covered, but if I have covered, does anybody remember what we said? The time spans of a time cycle are described in these terms. The length of the Ausarpini Kal that we are living in, I think I mentioned this previously, in total, from the first ara to the sixth ara, is 10 or 10 Koda Koti Sagarupam. Koda Koti means crore, which is 10 lakh is a million. Crore is 10 million, and 10 crore is 100 million. And basically, Thus, Koda Kodi Sagrupam, meaning 100 million multiplied by 100 million, that many Sagrupams, not that many years. And a Sagrupam, again, because it is a figure that cannot be imagined or numbers put against it, is described as one Sagrupam is described as a Koda Kodi Palyopam is one Sagrupam, or I think it's 10 Koda Kodi Palyopam, I'm not sure. Bharatbhai, correct me if I'm wrong. But a Palyopam is again described as without numbers. It is described as the time it would take for a hole which is 1 yojan in width, 1 yojan in length, and 1 yojan in depth. And that hole being filled by very fine hair. Now, it is reputed that the Yuglic Manushyas have the finest hair, and if those hair are packed so tightly in this huge hole, and it is packed so tightly that if the whole army of a Chakravati would go and ride that particular, we would go over that hole, the packing, the tight packing would not allow even the army to suppress or to push down any of that mass of hair down further. So it is that tightly packed. And if a hair is removed from that hole, the amount of time that it takes to empty that hole of 1 yojan, cubic 1 yojan, that would be the time of 1 palyopam. So we are looking at a huge amount of time from the first ara to the 6th ara, but in total, the 4th, 5th, and 6th in our time cycle only is 1 Koda Kodi Sagrupam. The first, second, and third aras in this time cycle in total were 9 Koda Kodi Sagrupams. And the 4th, 5th, and 6th together is only 1 Koda Kodi Sagrupam. Most of the time span for this particular descending time cycle to end has gone. We are currently in the 5th ara, and about 2,500 plus years have gone. So we are left with about 18,000 few hundred years in this 5th ara. And then we'll have the 6th ara, which is also 21,000 years. And then the ascending time cycle starts again. 17 Sagrupams in relationship to the time of 1 Utsarpini or 1 Ausarpini is minuscule, but that is the time that was spent by Bhagwan Parshvanath's soul in Devlok, and that was the time that was spent by Kamat's soul in Narak. But these are billions and billions of years we are talking about. We are not talking about a small lifespan. Now, this may be quite difficult to grasp, but this is how Jain Dharma describes our journeys, and it is very easily conceivable that all of us have spent many, many lifetimes as devs many lifetimes in Narak. And if you look at Jeev Vichar and look at the lifespan of different species of animals, then some of them in different times and in different places are also very large. But the maximum lifespan of a human being, where, say, from if you talk about the time from Bhagwan Rishabdev, I mean, prior to that, in the Yuglic card, the lifespan of human beings was much longer as well, but nothing approaching the lifespans of devs and souls in Narak. But it was much longer than the longest lifespan that we hear about. Say, Bhagwan Rishabdev was 84 lakh Purva. A Purva is 8.4 million times 8.4 million years. That is one Purva. And 84 lakh Purva is 8.4 million Purvas. So that is the lifespan of Bhagwan Rishabdev. Currently, all the 20 Tirthankars in the Mahavidya Kshetra have a similar lifespan of 84 lakh Purva, or 8.4 million, 84 lakh Purvas. Those are the time spans that are described in Jainism. Maybe at some stage, we did cover some of this in the class on Nav Tattva. The second point I just wanted to discuss here was what begets the life of a Dev, what begets the life as a Narak. What kind of acts do you have to commit, thoughts that you have to think, and what is the general behavior that could ensure that we form the Ayushya Karma as a Dev, or conversely, what are the bad thoughts, deeds, actions that could ensure that we get born in Narak. Now, in many ways, it is very easy to form the karma that can take us straight to hell. And it is also fairly easy to form karmas that would take us to Devlok. The awareness of the intensity of where we are emotionally and thinking about what begets bad karmas is extremely important if you want to avoid a very negative, a very destructive future life. Sometimes, because we do not understand, we are completely oblivious to recognizing that what we may have done in 5 minutes or 10 minutes mentally may have contributed to us acquiring a huge amount of karma that could pull us down. And similarly, we could spend a few good moments in decent thoughts that may elevate us. How many of you have heard about the story of Prasen Chandra Rajashi? I know Bharatbhai, Sheila-ben have heard, and I'm sure Bijal
Yes.
has heard. Anybody else? maybe Sandeep and Shalina might have heard. You want me to quickly recite that story? It won't take long, and we'll still move forward with our story on Bhagwan Parshvanath.
Yes, please.
Okay. Now, the story of Prasanna Chandra Rajarshi is actually very inspiring, and this is recited. It's part of the narrative of Bhagwan Mahavir's life. When Bhagwan Mahavir was, after he had achieved Kevul Gnan, and he was in the 30 years that he spent as a Tirthankar, moving from place to place and giving sermons in a Samvasaran. Once he comes and to the outskirts of the city of Rajguri in the state of Magad. Now, Bhagwan Mahavir during his lifetime came to Rajguri often, and King Shrenik was his devout bhakt, his devout disciple. And the story relates around what happens once when Bhagwan Mahavir is out on the outskirts of Rajguri. The Devs have created the Samvasran, and King Shrenik with his soldiers and his men is going there in his sort of savari, so the usual horses and the people that move with him, because he was the king of Magad. And he's going to meet Bhagwan Mahavir, bow down to him, and sit down in the Samvasran and listen to his sermon. On the way, as they are crossing the path, along the path on one side there is a Muni who is standing on one foot, on one leg, with the other leg folded on his straight knee, uh, with both his hands pointing up in the air and him looking up to the sky at the sun and meditating in this way. Is quite a severe penance that he's performing. And this King Shrenik is intrigued by this Muni Bhagwant. And while they are walking, two of his soldiers who are accompanying the caravan, and they are part of King Shrenik's troop. One of them recognizes this particular monk, and he talks to his fellow soldier, his neighbor, and says, "Do you know who this person is? The monk who is standing by the roadside here and meditating." Says, "No, I don't." And says, "Well, he used to be the king of a big state, and because he became very vairagi and desired to become a monk, he put his very young son on the throne and left his son in the care of his ministers and became a monk himself. So his son was placed on the throne as the new king, but his son was quite young, so the ministers were managing the kingdom for him." And this soldier then also shares his understanding of the situation at that stage. He says that the ministers there are not really very uh, decent. They are plotting to try and uh, usurp the king and take over the power from him. And the troop carries on moving, and they have just uttered these few words. They are talking, gossiping basically. And the troop moves. King Shrenik and the soldiers come to Bhagwan Mahavir's Samvasrana, and King Shrenik sits down there. And after a while, he asks Bhagwan Mahavir that on the way here, we met Muni Bhagwant who was meditating so um, eh, with such a great force. What would happen to him if he died now? So Bhagwan Mahavir tells him that if the Muni, so Deepa says, you heard this story before, okay, Deepa? So Bhagwan Mahavir tells him that if he died now, he would go to the seventh hell. After a while, King Shrenik obviously is a bit shocked and confused that a Muni Bhagwant, who is an ascetic, who is standing in deep meditation, who is a monk, who has taken 5 major vows, Mahavrat Lita Chene, and he will go to Narak if he dies now. So after a while, he thinks that maybe things might have changed. So he asks Bhagwan Mahavir, what would happen if he died now? And Bhagwan Mahavir says that if he dies now, he will go to one of the high devloks. And soon after that particular exchange between King Shrenik and Bhagwan Mahavir, the Samvasran, everybody in there begins to hear the sounds of what is called a dundubi. Dundubi is a celestial musical instrument that sometimes waves play in celebration of a fantastic or a major event. And suddenly everybody hears this sound of a beautiful musical instrument called dundubi. From the pictures that I've seen, it seems if this is like a large wind instrument. That is how it is depicted. Uh, and King Shrenik asks, why are the devs playing this instrument now? What has happened? And Bhagwan Mahavir says that the Muni Bhagwan that you were asking me about, he has just achieved Keval Gnan. So over a period of probably, I mean, just guessing, a few minutes, an hour, half an hour, we don't know. Those details are not given. But the soul has acquired enough pap karma to take him down to seventh hell. He has got rid of all that karma and acquired enough punya to take him up to the high devlok, up to a high devlok. And within a short time after that, he's got rid of all his karmas, the ghati karmas, and achieved Keval Gnan. So he is now guaranteed to go to moksha. So what had happened? As soon as this king, Prasanchandra Rajarshi means Rushi who was a Raja, Rajarshi, Prasanchandra, hears these two soldiers talking about the difficulties that his young son is facing without realizing. His mind gets quite disturbed. And as a king who has been very courageous and extremely brave and able, he begins to think, how can anybody take over the rights of my son and uh, get rid of him? And in his mind, he starts fighting a war. So he's somebody who in his previous life has probably fought many wars, and he's probably had been a fantastic warrior, and he starts fighting. But the way the mind works, he keeps on losing this battle that he's fighting in his mind. He keeps on fighting with his sword, with his spear, and gradually he begins to lose the battle because the mind has taken its own, he's forgotten about the meditation and he's fighting a battle. And in his mind, in the battle, he's killing many, many people and he's extremely aggressive that a soldier would have to be when he's fighting deadly enemies. This carries on in his mind, and slowly he begins to lose all his weapons. He loses his sword, he loses his shield, he loses everything else. And then when he's still fighting and others are attacking him, he doesn't have any weapon in his hands, and he begins to think that I cannot be defeated. I have another weapon. And he says in those days, kings or soldiers used to wear metal helmets with a pointed spike on top. Some of you might have seen this in museums in India, in Jaipur. So that metal spiked helmet is something that he imagines that he has, and he puts his hand on his head like this. And obviously, what he finds is a bare head with no hair on it, and obviously uh, no metal helmet. And suddenly he begins to think, what have I done? What am I doing? I'm fighting a battle when I've taken a vow of total non-violence. Why am I angry? None of this that is going on in the world has anything to do with me now, and I'm not responsible for any of this. And his thinking changes completely. And then his progress starts. He gets rid of all that karma that he had acquired in that short time of taking him to Narak. He acquires punya to take him to Swarg, and then suddenly he gets rid of all the karmas and all Gati karmas and achieves Kyodan. So that is the story of King Pasan Chandra. So just to illustrate how easy it is to actually acquire karmas that can take us down or to take us up. But ultimately, the soul's goal is not to acquire either good or bad karmas, but to get rid of all the karmas to achieve moksha. Let me share the slides again. Okay. Now, this is the last slide, just depicting the difference. On the left, this is Narak. What you see here is a depiction of Narak. Jain Dharma describes 7 hells, which are all situated underneath the surface of the Madhyalok, that is the middle part, and it goes down from the first to the seventh, and the seventh is right down almost towards the end of the uh, Lokakash, that is the universe where bodies can move, and that is at the depth of 7 rajus. Again, that is a system of depicting distance, which we can discuss at some stage. So we've got 7 rajus or 7 rajlok below us and 7 rajlok above us. The Siddh Shila, where all the souls who achieve moksha go to, is 7 rajlok up or 7 rajus up uh, skywards, and the seventh hell is towards the 7 at the bottom of where we are, and those are huge distances. The depiction here is of those devs with horns on their heads who are punishing these people, hanging them upside down, boiling them in vats of uh, uh, hot oil, etc. These are scenes that are described, I think, in the Bible as well. So you'll burn in the fires of hell. So that is similar. According to Jain Dharma, the Paramadhami Devs are only present in the upper 2 or 3 naraks. I've forgotten exactly number, but further below the there are no Paramadhami Devs, but the narak, the souls and the lives of the people there, the Narki Jeev there, they punish each other and they fight with each other for a very, very long time. And the further down we go, the further does the atmosphere becomes extremely inhospitable. It is said that if soul from Narak of a person from Narak was brought to the coldest region on earth, they would actually feel very, very warm there, because the cold in Narak is so extreme that it is impossible for us to imagine. Similarly, there may be places where it is extremely hot as well. But obviously, in this Narak, the bodies are made in such a way, they're all Vaikriya bodies. They don't die. And until the time is up. So the bodies are, in that sense, indestructible. Similarly, in Devlok, the bodies are uh, made of Vaikriya Pudgal or Vaikriya Sharir. Again, they are not born of either in Narak or in Devlok, born due to a union of a man and a woman. They are born in their specific Dev Shyayas, where the body comes into being at the time when the soul moves into that, and after a short while, a fully formed body is formed. That is how Devs and uh, souls in Narak are uh, born or created. On the right, you can see the depiction of a Devlok, where Dev, in this case, the soul of Marubhuti, who is the big Dev in this Devlok and is enjoying the pleasures of Devlok. That is the end of the slides. I'm going to end today's class here, and next week we will move out to the, so this was the third bhav. We'll move on to the fourth bhav from next week. Any questions? You mentioned in the last lecture, Muni Arvind and his Swat proceeded towards Astapad to do darshan of. Sorry, Hasmupai, do you want to, Hasu, I couldn't read the whole of it. Do you want to darshan of the Tirthankars? Was Astapad accessible at the time of Bhagwan Parshvanath? Now we must remember that this wasn't at the time of Bhagwan Parshvanath. And this was much before that. Now, following that life as Marubhuti the elephant, we have heard that uh, the uh, the soul spent 17 Sagrupams in Devlok. And this was the third lifespan. And as we go along, we will talk about the other lives before that. So this was obviously much before the life as Bhagwan Parshvanath. And during the time of Bhagwan Parshvanath, uh, Astapad would have been accessible, but possibly not to everybody. We know that during the time of Bhagwan Mahavir, Astapad was only accessible to certain people with powers and those who were probably going to moksha in that lifetime. And we know this because Guru Gautam Swami made a journey to Ashtapad to prove to himself whether he would be going to moksha in this lifetime or not, because he had heard that if only somebody with his own power can climb up Ashtapad or go up to Ashtapad in this lifetime, then he's destined to go to moksha. So he tests the words of Bhagwan Mahavir in his own personal quest, because a lot of his disciples were getting Keval Gnan, and Guru Gautam Swami, as we know, did not get Keval Gnan until after Bhagwan Mahavir's Nirvan, because of his attachment to Bhagwan Mahavir. And before that, he goes up to Ashtapad and he uses his one other Labdhi. I mean, Guru Gautam Swami had a lot of powers, different powers, but in his lifetime, he only used two of his powers, and both of them during this particular journey. So on his climb up to Ashtapad, he uses the power of using the rays of sun to very quickly ascend or sort of fly up to the top of Ashtapad range. He actually goes there and spends the night, and on his way back, when he comes down, he meets these 1,500 ascetics who were meditating, thinking that they wanted to achieve moksha, but they couldn't move further up along Ashtapad because they did not have the power. But they see that Guru Gautam Swami has the ability to move up, and they decide that when he comes down, we will become his disciples because he seems to have the power. So when he comes down, they stop him and they have a conversation. And they ask Guru Gautam Swami that we want to follow you. And Guru Gautam Swami says that you need to follow my Guru. So let me take you all to him, and all 1,500 of them move towards where Bhagwan Mahavir was at that time from Ashtapad. And on the way there, when they stop for some rest, Guru Gautam Swami asks them, what do you want to eat today? Because these are people that he is taking with him, and he sees it as a responsibility to feed them. They say, like, if we find something like kheer, then we'll be happy to consume that. So Guru Gautam Swami goes into the town, gets some kheer in his patra, that is that small patra that he would carry, and brings it there. And he proceeds to feed those 1,500 tapases with that small quantity, using his power, which is, I think it's called Akshay something Labdhi. As long as he's got his thumb dipped into that piece of that uh, food or fluid, that patra would never get empty. So he feeds all those 1,500. So those are the two times that he used his powers. And so, in answer to your story, to your question about was Ashtapad accessible during Bhagwan Parshvanath's time, yes, it would have been accessible, but I'm not sure whether it was accessible to ordinary people. But also, in the story of Bharat Chakravarti, who built those temples, there is a mention that during his lifetime, understanding what before he actually achieved Keval Gnan, understanding what the times were going to be, he himself actually creates a barrier to people accessing the Ashtapad Parvat. So, Trisasya Shalaka Purush Charitra in the first chapters on Bhagwan Rishabdeva and Bharat Chakravarti does mention how Bharat Chakravarti restricts access to Ashtapad even during his lifetime, that is billions and trillions of years ago.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Sorry, if you ask me a question, I realize that I probably tell you much more than you wanted an answer to. So my apologies if that is disturbing to you. I'm sorry if that gets too long-winded. Apologies, Ajitbhai. Okay. Any other question?
Nothing from sent to me, Ajitbhai.
Okay. All right. Okay, let's end now, and we'll carry on with the story next week. I've said anything that is against the teachings of our Jain Dharma, our Tirthankar Paramatmas, I ask for forgiveness. Chinagna virudh kain parambolyo ho, te soy manochan kaya kari, tasmichhami dukadam. Sarvamangalamangalyam, sarvakalyana karanam, pradhanam sarvadharmanam, janam jayati sasanam. Keep well, everybody. Thank you, Bharatbhai.
Thank you, Ajitbhai.
Everybody, thank you, everybody. Bye,
Thank
Chetan. Thank you.
Jai Jinendra.
Jai Jirendra.
Thank you.